I'm told I'm good to go. So, guys, here we are. Sans musical intro and sans our usual backdrop. In fact, I'm in a totally different place. And we'll be again in a different place in a matter of weeks. Yes, here I am. I've returned the nomadic Lynn Cullen. First of all, apologies for leaving you in the lurch for as long as I did. It was not intentional, and it wasn't my fault. So what I thought was happening is I left for a trip to Israel and Jordan, right? Which I did. And someday when things calm down, I'll tell you about it. And then in my absence, City Paper and Point Park University parted ways, and hence the studio I was doing the show from disappeared. And we have had some difficulty finding a replacement, although we will have a permanent replacement in a matter of weeks. Meanwhile, in the interim, as they say, I am going to broadcast here from a conference room at Pittsburgh City Paper. So we don't have a lot of bells and whistles. And in fact, we don't have a phone system set up that you can call. Is it possible we are going to do that before I leave? We're going to try. If in fact all you got is moi and your emails, then I would just love if you would give me feedback, please, on email. And that's why I have my trusty computer right here, so I'll see them the minute they pop up. And that is Lynn, Lynn, at pghcitypaper.com. Okay? Well, here's the good news. We're all still alive. The bad news is so rife. The plethora of bad news is tsunami-like. And given the fact that I've been off the air for about 6 weeks, I mean, I don't even know how to back up. Maybe we shouldn't back up, all right? We all survived whatever the hell that was that happened. But in reality, if you think about it, we are in the most bizarre of times, in that the Cold War is back in spades. I mean, now we've got, itchy nuclear button fingers on our side and the other side. We have, all of a sudden, civil rights. Blacks and whites is as ugly a mess as I've seen it in I don't know how long. This is also seemingly retro. So this is what Donald Trump and the Republicans have done to us. They've time traveled us back to all the worst parts of American history. It's we can revisit every horror of American history. If you were waiting for me to say something intelligent about all this, then I apologize up front, because I am no different than anybody else, including all those so-called, experts who sit around tables on CNN and MSNBC and all those other places and pontificate. They don't know either what is going on, what it will come to, what we will come to, what is the end game. Can we breathe again? How will Donald Trump exit the White House? Once he does, how permanently damaged is our democracy? I will argue it is going to be very, very damaged. Nobody knows. So I bring you no solace. I bring you no answers. I bring you a bit of advice because I didn't have to be as up to snuff on all this news as I have to be when I'm doing this show in the 6 weeks I was off the air. I found that you can live a life in which Donald Trump does not intrude every other minute. And let me tell you something. That's a good thing. So inasmuch as you are still addicted, perhaps, to being absolutely up to the minute on the latest horror, on the latest frightening pronouncement and tweet, on the latest saber rattling from Washington or Pyongyang. How do I even know how to pronounce that North Korean capital? It doesn't make a damn bit of difference, except in your mental and physical health. So don't do it. I can barely stomach listening to any of the cable news shows now or broadcast news shows. I can't. My recommendation to you is to get your news online and in print, and to seek out intelligent, more long-form and unhysterical observers. And people say, well, who do you listen to? I mean, I don't know. I think we need to reacquaint ourselves with our own brains, okay? And our own ability to sort through information and come to our own conclusions. Trust yourself. Look, I'll tell you this much. You're smarter than the President of the United States. You're more cool-headed than the President of the United States. You know more history and thus can contextualize what is going on in current events much, much better than the President of the United States. So give yourself a little bit of, of credit and use your head. Use your own head. Oh, my. So, the big bummer, I thought, was that Scaramucci only lasted, 10 days? Because he was, even for the Trump administration, that guy was so wondrously out of central casting. You couldn't make him up. Damn. 10 days. In fact, he hadn't really started. I guess his date of initial date of employment hadn't even come before he was shown the door. The mooch, man, you can't make it up. There was a picture when the mooch was still in, and he and some other members of Trump's inner circle had exited a vehicle, as the police are wont to say, and they were walking toward the camera. And this picture captured the most frightening array of humanity I have seen since, the Charlie Manson trial. And to know that these were the people who had the President of the United States' ear was, frightening. But we're used to terror these days, aren't we? Getting used to being in a constant state of terror. It was Scaramucci, the picture, walking toward the camera. And behind him was, what's her name? Amoroso from the, is that her name? Omarosa from The Apprentice. That mean girl. And she was swathed in a incredibly tight-fitting dress and high heels. And so there's the mooch. There's Omarosa. Behind her is this frightening-looking Nazi named Gorka. Gorka, who doesn't even sound like an American, by the way, because he barely is. Some friggin' Hungarian fascist. But the president loves them. And I believe Steve Miller, that Weasley little neo-Nazi, was also in the group. And maybe the rumpled Mr. Bannon. I don't know. But looking at that was the brain trust of the Donald Trump administration. And in that picture, it was, well, there it was. A picture is worth 1,000 words. There it was. Oh. As I lived through the last 6 weeks, one of the events that most flipped me out, and this is going to seem like ancient history now, but one of the events that most flipped me out, because I did not think the condemnation was strong enough. It, to me, was one of the more horrific events. It was West Virginia. It was the Boy Scout Jamboree. There was something that was so creepy about that scene, about a wannabe fascist autocratic ruler speaking to the youth in their little proto-military costume, and with them just eating it up. It looked, for all the world, to me, like a Hitler Youth rally. And then the inability of this buffoon-in-chief to have any sense of how one would address a group of young people. None, because he doesn't care about anything or anybody but himself. And so he just did one of his usual things. He talked about himself. Then, I'll tell you, the thing when he starts talking to these kids about some repulsive billionaire's party he was at, and I'll tell you, I mean, so wholly unacceptable. If I were a parent who had a child in the Boy Scouts of America, I would have them out as a absolute protest of them allowing and seemingly aiding and abetting. And these apologies always come too late. The apologies from the Boy Scouts came too late. God knows our dear leader's most recent apologies came way too late. Man. And here's another chilling thing that he's doing. He's doing these rallies like he's running for office, like it's October. Youngstown, Huntington, West Virginia. He goes where his voters are, where his base is, where he feels loved. And those rallies, too, bear a semblance and resemblance to Hitler rallies. I'll tell you this. When I was in Israel, I did go, as you must, to Yad Vashem, which is the essentially the Holocaust. What did Spicer call it? Oh, there's Holocaust centers. Was he talking about concentration camps? I think he was, right? So I went to Yad Vashem, which is the memorial to the Holocaust. And it is, I mean, there's no way to do that and not be sort of brought to your knees, literally, figuratively, in every way. And you are confronted. They take you chronologically through what happened. You are confronted with pictures, with video, with artifacts, with things that tell the story of how the hell this could have happened. And guys, I hate to tell you, but the first few rooms that we went through looked and felt a lot like America today. The same kind of political dysfunction, the same kind of nationalistic bully boy stuff starting up, the violence starting up, the people being culled into acceptable and unacceptable. To know the history of Germany as it slowly devolved into the horror of the Third Reich. You see it, and truly, what is most frightening is it looked a lot like us. Now, the early rooms, we're not up to the worst rooms yet. But that's why I bring no solace. We got a good 1/3 of our country people who want it. Bring on the Third Reich. They really do. They want it. Frightening. And so der wannabe Führer gives goes to his rallies and makes pronouncements like, with the exception of the late, great Abraham Lincoln, I can be more presidential than any president that's ever held this office. That's what he said. Wow. So, thank you, by the way, for all of you saying, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Here I am, and it's a little difficult because you can't talk to me. So please, will you, send me something that's more meaty than welcome back. Although, I truly appreciate the sentiment. Okay. Remember all those people who voted for this son of a bitch because he was going to pull us back from policing the world? Remember? That was a big thing for those Republicans. Uh-huh. How many wars has he threatened? Nuclear. I couldn't believe the Venezuela thing the other day. I thought, what? Where did that come from? Now we're going, what? War with friggin' Venezuela? And let me tell you, by the way, about the stupidity of this orange monster. By threatening Venezuela as he did, he gave the largest gift he could possibly have given to the bad guys there. To the bad guys. Because their litany is, we need to stay strong because the big bad US of A is going to come and take away your freedoms. And then he just flat out says it. That we're going to possibly intervene militarily. It's exactly the kind of stupidity that he does with ISIS. He plays right into the very narrative that ISIS recruiters use all over the world. They hate you. They hate Islam. They hate the Arabs. And then you got this guy who, starts saying, Arabs are not welcome. These guys are to be, again, culled from the herd of real Americans. Oh, dear. So, guys, I don't know. Fire and fury. They say he came up with that on his own. No, he didn't. I just want to say no, he didn't. It's too poetic for him. My understanding is, and maybe I dreamt it, but I believe Harry S. Truman warning the Japanese prior to our dropping of the atom bombs use that term, fire and fury. You can look it up. I'm not sure. But what that tells me is that somebody in Trump's camp, and I would bet it would be a Bannon or a Miller or a Seb Gorka, looked it up, saw the phrase, and, got a hard on and gave it to the press. Jesus. So nice to hear your voice again. Well, thank you so much. Okay, Henry's writing, but we still have no leadership in the Democratic Party. Oh, gosh. I could talk for hours. The hapless Democrats. The farther we get away from the election, and the more you're able to sort of, I think, see how blind we were. We, you, me, all of us. Seriously. Living in our little bubbles. How shocked we were when we lost. Well, if we had been paying some attention, I don't think we would have been so shocked. We weren't listening to anybody but ourselves. And the scary thing is the Democratic Party is, I agree, leaderless. Because there's no, and this, what is that idiot message that slogan? What? They sat around, God forbid they paid some consultant to come up with, what was it? It's something, a deal, a better deal? What did Schumer trot out? Come on, gag. I want to gag. Look, clearly one of the things the Democrats have to do is stop, and now I'm going to sound like a right-winger here, stop with the identity politics. It's killing us. It's killing our ability to create and lure back people who used to feel comfortable in our tent. And it's getting absurd. A better deal. Oh, that'll have them. Wow, Katie bar the door. People will be stampeding over each other to get to the polls with something like that firing them up. A better deal. Yeah. And a latte in every pot. No, there is something to this elitist aspect of the Democratic Party. There is something to it that's real. Because I myself have had it up to here with a lot of lefties. And I have. I can't take much more. I really can't. And if I'm reacting to a lot of their crapola, the cis shit, I get emails from people who then announce at the bottom of their name, at the end, what pronouns you can use for them. I'm sorry, guys. My reaction to that is, fuck you. It is. These are not important. If we want power, then we've got to stop this shit. Stop it right now. We can work on that kind of thing. I'm not saying the intent is not wonderful. It's just we got bigger fish to fry than pronouns. Even my own son, who's usually with it, came up to me. He says, "What is cis-ish?" What was it? It was a different. It wasn't just cis. It was cis. He said, somebody kept calling me a cis something. And I looked it up, and it turns out it's just another way of saying cis. But these verbiage that just keeps coming. Excuse me, what is cis? Again, for those of you who don't know, cis is, and correct me if I'm wrong, cis means that you identify, you are comfortable in the skin of the, as you were identified at birth. When I came out, they said, "That's a girl," and I, even now in my dotage, say, "Yep, that's a girl," right? So I'm cis heterosexual because I'm a girl, and I get the hots for guys. Okay, fine. Who gives a shit? I'm sorry. It's just not the biggest thing, guys. We see what the big things are now. Nuclear effing war. The destruction of our planet. The environmental regulations. You want real stuff? The hatred coming at, yes, we're battling this kind of hatred, but you, by focusing on these increasingly smaller, aggrieved groups, we're just atomizing everybody. You know, I once heard, I think it was my mother said to me, she said, with this sexuality and gender stuff, she says, why don't people realize that as many humans as there are on the earth, that's how many genders there are. That's how much every individual has their own unique sexuality. Yes, they tend to group in larger groups, but in as much as that's true, what, are we all supposed to now have a, Please stop it. Please stop it. There's bigger fish. And I see people here who probably are not agreeing with me on this, but please stop it. It's killing us. You want to know why we're losing voters left and right in the heartland? Because the heartland looks at some of this stuff, and they're good people. They are. They're not racists. A lot of them. I know these people. They look at the loons on the left, and they say, good God almighty. I'm not kidding. And the left has the same fascistic tendencies as the son of a bitches on the right. Anytime somebody starts telling me what words I can say, what pronouns to use, what words are forbidden, I don't care if you're coming from Leftville or Rightville, my response to you is drop dead. Mind your own business. Jesus. The word police. Again, I don't care. It's one step away from book burning. You coming from left, coming from right. I don't care. You want control, you want power, you're no friend of mine. I'm much more aligned with libertarians in this regard. Much more. And the left's killing itself with this shit. There, I feel better now. And I know I think a lot of this is, driven by younger people, younger activists. And I think it's a good thing if us older activists tell them, I don't think this is a real good strategy if we're looking to win national elections and to take back legislatures. Because that's what we got to do. All right. Isn't anybody going to argue with me? God damn it. P.S. Trump released a 2020 re-election commercial. Oh, yeah. What's with these re-election commercials? What's with Trump TV? Again, this is right out of Nazi Germany's playbook. If they had TV, man, they would have had a Hitler TV. Unbelievable. And even if Trump TV goes away, there's going to be a huge network of television stations all over this country that'll be doing the work. Later in the week, I want to really talk about Sinclair Broadcasting because it poses a real and present danger to our democracy. Trump released 2020 re-election and he takes credit for all the Obama accomplished over 8 years. I know, yeah. Where's the Democratic leadership? Well, I almost wish they'd shut up. I don't even care where they are. I mean, when the Republicans are doing a rather good job of self-destruction, I think that Nancy Pelosi can take a little break. Steny Hoyer, shut up. I mean, the old Democrats, and God bless them for all the good work they did. We gotta, when I say we, I mean, I'm a Democrat because I live in Pittsburgh and I want to vote. But I feel no real allegiance to the Democratic Party as currently constituted. I do not. And I think a lot of us are in that boat. A lot of Republicans are. A lot of good Republicans. A lot of Democrats. We have no party. These parties have both sold their souls long ago. Long ago. Barbara, what are you writing? Roger, no Lynn Cullen and no Bill Maher in July. Yeah. I got to tell you, though, so I tuned into Bill Maher when he came back, and I found I had no stomach for watching. I just have no stomach for it anymore, any of it. For the fact that I think he had on, some right-winger or some I don't want to listen to any of these people anymore. I really don't. I want to read. I want to, as I said earlier, I just want to take in information unfiltered through television and come to my own conclusions and trust myself to be able to do it, as all you smarty pants can too. Oh, Roger, I'll share the sad news. His 16-year-old puppy, Dakota, died Monday. It's so hard. He lived in the shadow of our infamous Skookum, but Dakota was appreciated and loved as the good Skookum. I remember that dog because I got an email once from Roger, this guy, a million years ago, telling the funniest story about what this dog had done. And if you want to, Roger, send me a replay in case I've forgotten a lot of it. But this dog was infamous, had a taste for money. And I mean that literally. I mean, this dog ate money like unbelievable. And Roger famously spent a day sifting through Skookum's poop and then pasting together, I'm not kidding, pasting together the money. Dorothy, one of the most entertaining moments during your absence was John McCain's, thumbs down on the skinny, I run hot and cold on him, but thank goodness for his vote. Yeah, we're all complicated people. John McCain is obviously a complicated person. I don't want to give him as much credit as a lot of people have, because he talks a good game all the time. But other than that vote, he's voted with Trump lock, stock, and barrel, as have some of these others that get, called out as, oh, did you hear, Senator this, the Republican actually said this about Trump. Who cares? They vote with him. And I don't know. I mean, McCain, if he had not done what he did, I really would have been stunned. Because when you're looking at your own demise, he had no reason but to do the right thing. No reason at all but to do the right thing. I mean, you can't, unless you're a total horrible human being, like most Republican senators, you cannot get out of your well-appointed deathbed and fly at taxpayers' expense to Washington, D.C. to cast a vote against giving even inadequate health care to those same taxpayers who are paying for your Cadillac health care. I mean, you gotta be, well, which is the case for all the rest of the Congress. You know what their health care package is like? It's the best. Oh, man, no worries about deductibles and anything. I mean, it covers everything. You can go to the best. That must cost a lot of money, though, right? Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. They got us. We pay for it. The absolute immorality of them taking our money to give themselves the greatest insurance while working as hard as they did, these friggin' Republicans, to deny a modicum of health insurance to taxpayers who were footing the bill for their plan it's beyond me. It's beyond me. It's evil. It is. It's evil. Ansel says, my township had their Community Day celebration and Tim Murphy marched in the parade. He walked alone with a bag of candy, which he would throw to the children. I bet he was throwing it at the children. It was hard candy, right? I live in a Republican-dominated borough, and you should have heard the heckling. Murphy, you suck, yelled one person. Tim, you're out in 2018, yelled another. I was surprised he was even there, given that he won't hold a town hall meeting. Well, that is sort of interesting. He didn't have, stormtroopers around him for... Wow. Well, I don't think you'll see him in a parade again for a while. I don't know if it's too much to hope that the voters will toss these guys out. I just don't know. Mary writes, the tweet that kicked me hardest in the gut, and I saw this too, and here it is. It's right. If you've ever wondered what you would have done during Hitler's rise to power, you're doing it now. There it is. Yeah. And that's what was clear when I went to Yad Vashem. Doesn't happen just happens little by little. You get a little more comfortable with the dysfunction, with the what wasn't normal now being normal, with the change in tone, all of that. Yesterday on Twitter, making the rounds, was a film that I imagine was put out by some studio in Hollywood or something, that was an anti-fascist film, maybe all of I don't know if I saw the whole thing, but what they were putting out was about a 3-minute bit of a rabble-rouser trying to, get people to turn on each other. And it was, recognize that if people are saying this is how it started in Germany. In this film, it said that it came out in 1943. If that is the case, then, or it doesn't. And then I saw somewhere else that said 1947. Either way, during World War II or immediately after World War II, everybody was retweeting this thing and saying how wonderful it was that, there was this effort to clearly educate Americans to be wary of people coming with this kind of a message. But what blew me away about the film is that the guy talks about Negroes taking your job. He talks about Catholics. And he talks about Freemasons. But the word Jew is never mentioned. And I found that so startling. If you're in the middle of the Holocaust or immediately after the Holocaust and you're trying to show people what the uprise of fascism in Germany looked like, and you never say Jew, that's interesting. So that was a film made in America that removed the Jew from the horror of fascism, which just underscored the fact that America did absolutely nothing to save the Jews. Nothing. The more you know American history, the more you feel sullied. I want to share with you a piece that made me, I have a confession to make. Oh, shoot. Please let me have it here. I have a confession to make. I've always had sort of a thing for Robert E. Lee. Mostly because I thought he was hot. He's really good looking, sat astride a horse, really good. And then in the history books that I learned from, he was a gentleman in every way. A gentleman, a gentleman. He was sorrowed by the war, but it had to be fought. He had no choice. And then the dignity with which he held himself upon surrender. I just thought, Robert E. Lee, that's a class act. I'm serious. Well, the statue in Charlottesville is of Robert E. Lee, okay? And Josh Marshall did a really good piece, giving us a history lesson about these Confederate statues that are causing such consternation in the country now. And he points out that Lee is known, think about it, for just one thing. And that is being the key military leader in a violent rebellion against the United States of America, and being the leader, essentially, in the field of that rebellion intended to protect slavery. The only logic, Marshall says, in honoring Lee in any way is to honor treason. I don't care if he's good looking. I don't care if he sits on a horse looking good. I don't care if he was nice to his kids and was erudite and had a lovely wife in marriage. He led a treasonous rebellion, bloody rebellion, against his country. And then Marshall says, and look the brilliance with which Abraham Lincoln made Lee see for all time, and supposedly us see for all time, the horror he had visited upon our country. He took Lee's plantation, Lincoln did. And do you know what he made it into? A burial ground for the Union dead. We call it Arlington National Cemetery. That was Robert E. Lee's plantation. And to make sure he would never come back to it, generals even carted bodies over that way to bury them in his yard, in his wife's rose bushes. One general in particular, a guy named Meigs, this was his. He was determined to punish Lee and shame him in public memory forever for betraying the United States of America. And he knew that if you made his ground, his home, a hallowed national cemetery, Lee and his family and his sons could never come back again. Meigs personally made sure that 26 bodies were buried around General Lee's wife's rose garden. And then when the war ended and one of his sons started making noise about reclaiming his father's estate, Meigs gathered up 2,111 unknown dead soldiers and buried them in a huge sealed vault in Lee's garden. Okay, so I'm telling you that just because of the brilliance of the maneuver. But after the war, Lincoln, who had done this with the cemetery and Lee's plantation, thought the only way the country would reconcile, right, is if the North didn't come down too hard on the South. And so the North and the South, after the war, made a little bargain, right? And so the South was allowed, even when the North was still in control during Reconstruction, immediately after the war, the South was allowed to start spinning a yarn about itself and about the war and about its storied history and the valor of its generals. And the result was that when the Northern troops withdrew by like 1870-something, Jim Crow was on its way to being put back in place. The South was allowed to reclaim its honor and to put the black man back in his place. So all these statues they're talking about taking down now, they were not put up during the war or immediately after the war. They were not put up during Reconstruction. They were put up specifically to solidify Jim Crow and to terrorize again and put in their place black Americans. And he points out all these statues, and when they went up in 1890-something, 1884, 1910, 1917, 1924, all of them to celebrate the South's ability to essentially reinstate, maybe not slavery, but an oppressive apartheid system and still be considered part of the United States of America. A statue of Robert E. Lee sitting handsomely on his horse in a southern town square had only one purpose: to let everyone know that white supremacy rules here. These statues were all built for that purpose and to remind and warn the black citizens of the South to mind their place. So, that's a little bit of a history lesson, and I think it makes perfectly clear that this coddling of Southerners and the South, allowing them to tell this airbrushed picture of their valorous fight, the war between the states, I believe they call it, right? Or the great, they call it other things too. And they teach it in a different way. And then the big mistake the North made in allowing them to essentially reestablish what they had lost. Maybe they couldn't actively buy and sell black people, but they could still terrorize them into submission. So there it was. I think all those statues need to come down now. I want to point out that there are a number of statues to Confederate heroes in the United States Capitol building. Bring them down. I think it's a good time to remedy a historic mistake. And here's another thought I had. This idea that if we just waited till the racists died out, things will be better. Have you looked at the racists in the streets? You looked at the guy who drove the car that injured and all those people and killed the young woman? Did you look at the racist that they picked up in Kansas City, who was going to blow a building up there because he so loved Timothy McVeigh? Have you looked at these guys? Yeah, they're all white. They're all male. And they're all in their 20s. So why did we think that, racism was going to die off as old racists died off? Racists beget racists. It is something that is so endemic and epidemic in the fiber of this nation that I don't know what we do. But to continue to deny it in any way is absolutely an impossibility. And you know what brought all this on. You do know what brought all of this crazed racism out. Yes, I know Donald Trump allowed it to come out, but no. It was Barack Obama. Make no mistake. It was the ascension of a black man into the White House that made these people crazy. And that is why they embraced this brash reality star who was the biggest leader of the birtherism movement. Racist. I mean, clearly, he started by appealing to racists. You know, that black guy in the White House, he ain't even an American. He says he was born in this country, but he was born in Africa. And that's what endeared Trump to the haters. And he rode that hate and then the white resentment all the way through to the White House, while we progressives and liberals congratulated ourselves on the fact that, and now, after having put a black man in the White House, we're going to put the first woman. It never even occurred to us how flawed the candidate we put up was. Maybe it did. I don't know. That she was anathema to so many people. And it's not that they had no reason, necessarily, to dislike her. And so, there it is. So, on the lighter side, did somebody say on the lighter side? Oh, good. You know, I was thinking that if we do the show again, if we start doing the show, we've got to have like a segment or a day that's called anything but. Right? Anything but the litany of horror. Okay, I'm going to assume, Roger, having not had the opportunity to read this before, I read it out loud to the audience, that I'm taking your word that this is on the lighter side and will be worth it. This occurred in 2005. My wife, daughter, and I have 2 dogs, Skookum and Dakota. Skookum's a border collie and beagle mix. He's a sweet and lovable 35-pound male who is very partial to women. Our problem is he's smart and bored. Yeah, well, he is a border collie and a beagle. You got trouble there. He gets into mischief, especially if it involves paper and women's underwear. Oh, my God. I had a dog like that. So, one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Had a dog like that. God. Okay, anyway. Last Saturday, I stopped at the bank to withdraw $500. This is the story, $500 in 20s. To take care of kitchen renovation expenses. I put the cash in a bank envelope, sealed it, placed the envelope in my jacket's inside pocket, and zipped it shut. I went home, let the dogs out of their crate, took them for a walk, returned, and draped the jacket around a chair. I then went into the basement to do some laundry and general cleanup. When I came back upstairs, I noticed my jacket was lying on the floor, with the inside pocket unzipped and turned inside out. Close by was Skookum, lying behind the living room chair with the bank envelope ripped open, enjoying a very tasty but expensive meal. Fortunately, he was savoring every mouthful. The remaining cash was neatly stacked under his left paw. After counting the leftover bills, I realized he had eaten 12 $20 bills. This was not the first time he had eaten money, so I knew I just had to let nature take its course and see what and how much came out in the end. By Wednesday, he was depressed because he was finally out of cash. Since my wife worked Friday night, I thought that would be the best time to recoup what was lost. I spread do we really want to go through this? I spread newspaper out on the laundry table, donned latex gloves, dumped the money mixture on the table, and went to work. I sort of felt like Grisham on CSI. The key is matching the serial numbers. They're at the top left and bottom right. You need to have both sets of numbers for the bank to give you clean bills in return. I sorted through the mess and determined obvious matches, not easy, with a cat jumping on the table. I placed each match in its own Ziploc sandwich bag and had one bag for miscellaneous paper to fill the voids later on. Oh my God. I filled each bag halfway with warm soapy water, zipped them tight, gave them a little shake to help loosen the debris, and let them sit overnight. Good God. Anyway, the next day they analyze the miscellaneous piles and match the tears and put together 12 miniature jigsaw puzzles. My wife then ironed the money and carefully taped the money, returning them somewhat to their original shape. Each individual bill was placed in its own Ziploc bag. Well, the teller was amused. However, the teller was not as amused when handed the taped-up tatters. All in all, we recouped $220 out of the $240 eaten. That's impressive. Okay. All right, dogs. You gotta love them. Okay. Is that it? Pretty much. So for those of you just coming in, we'll do the show from here until our new studio at an yet to be disclosed location is ready. And then we'll have, I guess, a better setup and we'll be able to take calls. But I hope we can figure out how to take calls before then. Just some quick emails here. Lynn writes, last night Jimmy Fallon dispensed with the funny monologue. He addressed the horrible events of the weekend. His emotions were on full display. Take heart, Lynn. There are people of courage who far outnumber the haters. Our democracy will survive. Justice will prevail. I promise. Okay. I hope you're right. I do agree. The better people outnumber the haters. But the haters are in power. They control the executive branch. They control most legislatures. They control the Congress of the United States. And they control the Supreme Court, pretty much, almost. One more, and it's over. Okay, so some of you talking about the transgender, and Chuck saying, Lynn, I'm right there with you. This summer I've ignored television news, brought digital subscriptions to the Times, the Post, and the Wall Street Journal. Sometimes I'll turn on one of the 30-minute nightly news programs, but that's it. It's a better way to go. News is a choice. We decide whether we'll allow cable news to yank us around by the nose all day or not. You don't learn a god dang thing to just keep on CNN or MSNBC. It is the same crap over and over again. All it does is make you crazy and does not make you prepared to be fully there for the resistance. Okay? One quick story, and then I'm going. This is, I was in Jordan, and a woman in hijab, I got into a conversation with her, and she said, so did you vote for Donald Trump? And I recoiled at the very thought. I said, oh, gosh, no, I wouldn't, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry what we've done. And she said, I don't understand. Everybody I talk to, every American I talk to say they didn't vote for Donald Trump. She said, so who did? And I said, I really think part of it is the people that you're going to encounter are less likely to be Trump voters because Trump voters tend to stay put. They don't get out and see the rest of the world. So it's not totally true, but I think it's maybe true enough that the people, Americans you're going to see in Jordan, obviously don't mind being with Muslims, right? Obviously are not the people who would have supported Donald Trump and his hateful policies. But it's interesting. She hasn't found one yet. So how did he win if nobody voted for him? Well, there's always Vladimir Putin to ask about that, too. All right, guys. This was odd for me to just be sitting here babbling. So I hope we can find a way to let you take better part. Thank you to all emailers. Thank you for being concerned about my whereabouts. A lot of you had me dead and buried. And I really appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow. I promise.